How did Band Friends come about?
Band of Friends came about. I actually moved to France quite a few years ago, and I had my record collection and everything in storage, you know.
Yeah.
So when I actually moved to a house in France, I managed to get everything out of storage.
Right.
And I hadn't heard vinyl for years.
Yes.
You know, because sometimes when you make a record, that's it, you've done, you move on to the next project. So when I put everything together and started listening to vinyl, going, God, this is great again, you know. And plus I had so many Rory albums that I played on, you know, so I started listening to them and I thought, I'd forgotten how good the songs were. You know, I'd forgotten how good a songwriter Rory was. And I just thought it wouldn't be great to get a couple of guys together and go out and do this. I know there's loads of tribute bands out there, you know, that do it, you know. I don't actually regard myself as a tribute artist, you know, that I play with Rory.
Yeah.
And I managed to get Ted McKenna, who sadly we lost a couple of years ago, on drums. He played with Rory for 3 years. Yeah. And a young guy from Amsterdam called Marcel Schuppenzel. And we just put it together and we went out on the road and it seemed to work, you know. It sort of snowballed.
Right. We are in Ireland. I'll speak my best Irish, which is actually French. Monsieur Kirkpatrick, oui, Monsieur McAvoy. Avez-vous le blues? Oui, le grand blues. And Irish, the fucking big old blues.
I mean, it's a two-phase situation, but it's sort of keeping Rory's music alive, as well as maybe keeping the blues alive, and you know, it's enjoyment.
I got a call from Gerry McAvoy out of the blue. Well, an email out of the blue, to be honest with you. And I think some people at the Ballyshannon festival had sort of put my name forward for it. So that's how it started.
Okay. You're playing at the moment with the Marshall amplifiers. That must be a very surreal experience, is it?
Yeah, it's strange. They're all stenciled up on the back in the Rory Gallagher band. So it's a nice little touch.
Yeah, they were Rory's amplifiers from back in the 80s. He's got it was a Marshall combo, 50-watt combo, and it was actually my 100-watt Marshall and 4x12 cabinet.
Oh, really?
That I bought and lent it to Rory.
Okay.
It was on loan, basically. That's what we're using on this tour. Yeah.
My name is Matthew Kelly, and I'm here because I own one of Rory Gallagher's amps, and I've known Gerry for a couple of years, and I usually bring the amp for Gerry for his gig at Ballyshannon. So I have a few of the amps, and I was lucky to get them in London a few years ago.
You know, I think there's a lot of punk energy in Rory Gallagher.
You're playing Marshall amps that belong to Rory Gallagher. Mm-hmm. What is that like, and how does it make it different to you?
Well, it's insane. That's what it is. I mean, if you take the Rory connection to that amp away, it's just a great Marshall amp. Yeah. From the heyday of the great Marshall amplifier days. If you bring Rory Gallagher back into the equation, I saw Rory play at Newcastle City Hall through that amp. Through the amp that I'm playing here.
There's the 50-watt one.
The 50-watt combo. Yeah. He had a 50-watt Marshall combo, the 50-watt Marshall combo, and an AC30 standing next to it, and he had a little yellow Boss overdrive. Right. And I remember going home from the Newcastle City Hall that night with my brother, and I says, Mom, you gotta get us a yellow Boss overdrive for Christmas. Because of Rory, you know. Now, so we were doing Bullfrog Blues the other night, and I'm going through this amp, and Gerry's standing there, and Brendan's sitting there, and I'm going through the amp, and we're playing Bullfrog Blues. And I'm thinking to myself, if you tap the 14-year-old boy on the shoulder at Newcastle City Hall, and including the Ted so when I saw Ted playing with Rory, and said, Paul, in the far distant future, this is where you're going to be. I'd say, well, sounds great, but I don't see how. How's that gonna? How does that work?
You must get some hair-raising experiences in terms of having the amplifier. I know you're always playing Rory music, but it must always be a...
It is, and to have the amplifiers on stage, the actual amplifiers that Rory uses, it's amazing, and plus for the two guys, using them, it's great for them, they're really enjoying it, and the simple thing is they sound bloody great.
Yeah.
They're the old Marshall amplifiers, they sound fantastic.
What does blues music mean to you?
Blues, well, blues is to me is basically it's folk music. It's just a certain expression and emotion that comes from rural communities, and obviously the nature of how they had to live, and those emotions grew out of those those emotions, and country blues, and then into Chicago, always from a very a downtrodden almost, or maybe just for the need to sing and play, just like Ireland, that's what it was when I found. The sing-song was entertainment, and it was communication from neighbours and family.
Oh, well, I think it's just a feeling, really. Yeah. Sometimes I find it more enjoyable to play the blues than listen to the blues, really. It's just, it makes you feel good when you play it. I think that's what it is. It does something in there.
What does blues music mean to you?
Everything.
Why do you think that music has such an appeal to so many people?
I think there's a number of factors. I think obviously Gerry and Brendan and Ted before him, they're seeing the guys who were a part of their childhood. I think a lot of people, it's great music, and it's played with it's played with passion.
You started playing rhythm guitar, I believe.
I did. School band. Brent O'Neill, who actually playing with again. He was putting a band together when we were in school, and He had a couple of friends, and he knew that I sort of dabbled in guitar, which is actually what it meant, dabbling in guitar. And he asked me, can I use my little finger? And I hadn't a clue what he was talking about. But obviously to play rhythm and blues, you know, to play a 12-bar, which I learned in later years. And I said yes, even though I didn't. And we ended up, that was the band put together, Brent and myself, a couple of other guys, Jim Ferguson and Robert Donaghy, all from Belfast, you know. And that's how it all started, you know. It's fairly humble beginnings.
You were drawing as well?
Yeah, I mean, I always enjoyed art. Yeah, I used to, me and another friend at home, we used to draw comics, and we'd share once a week we would run. I'd show him my comic and he'd show me his comic that we'd drawn, you know, on a sketch pad, you know. And we had our little characters, you know, and yeah, that was fun. That was fun.
Brilliant. The music scene in Belfast for you growing up, like, was the show bands around, or were they not a thing up in Belfast?
Oh, there were show bands, of course, yeah. I mean, the show bands would have played the main ballrooms, the Boom Boom rooms, the Adelphi, Romanos, all these, you know, show band places. The big band would come on and play, you know, 4-piece, 5-piece band, play for 20 minutes. And that's how it started. I mean, it was quite a vibrant scene in Belfast at the time, you know, sort of mid-60s onwards. There's a big rhythm and blues scene in Belfast.
Yeah. I
mean, Van Morrison's father, I think, or mother, had an amazing blues collection. That's where Fan got it all from, you know. These bands, the Madlands, the Interns, the Interns, the Few. I mean, there's so many bands, you know, beat bands, you know, around. I'm playing all over Ireland, you know.
That started with guitar. What inspired you to pick it up in the first place?
Oh, well, I think it's one of those things I just always wanted to do, really, and probably as a kid, probably more into sort of mainstream music, really, and it was probably Brian May for me that made me want to pick the guitar up. And then, of course, you sort of get into that, and then you read that he was influenced by Jimi Hendrix. So you listen to Jimi Hendrix, and then once you've done that, you then discover Eric Clapton, then you discover Rory Gallagher, you discover Peter Green, and then you discover B.B. King, Albert King, Freddie King, and then you discover Robert Johnson, and you go back. And
what got me started? Well, I suppose really at the very beginning, my mum and dad were very musical, not in a professional sense, though, but just lots of, I mean, every Friday, Saturday night, my father would go out with his brothers and his father and go to the pub, and after the pub shut at 10 o'clock, they'd all be back at our house, and a lot of stout under their arm, and a sing-song would start. And from as early as I can remember, honestly, 2-3 years of age, sometimes being waken up at like 1 o'clock in the morning to come and sing a song, you know. It was just, father played the accordion, my mum and him sang together. They were really into people like the Mills Brothers and Hank Williams, Arthur Tracy, the street singer. My dad loved all of that sort of stuff, you know, show music and everything. So it was always there, you know.
Like most kids who grew up in the 1970s, great music on the radio, great music on the television, and it just had us in its grasp from really. It sounds a big statement, but I think I was hooked on music before my conscious mind was fully formed. You know, my mother used to listen to like the Carpenters and Glenn Campbell and ABBA and Wings and the Beatles, and my father used to listen to Beethoven and Mozart and Bach and all of this stuff. And then, you know, like I say, you had the television and you had the radio, and then like when we saw Top of the Pops, we actually see guys playing guitars. Yeah. But I mean, that was it, you know. And I wanted to get into it, and I was hassle. Can I have a guitar? Can I have a guitar? And what happened was my father took ill with cancer, you know. And he struggled with cancer for 2.5 years, and he died of cancer 10 days before Christmas 1978. Right. So his brother went out and bought me a guitar for that Christmas to save Christmas, and he bought my brother a drum kit as well, and so that's how I started playing the guitar. So my mother's like having a nervous breakdown, and I'm having terrible trouble at school, but I'm going home and I've got this guitar and I've got the albums. You know, I've got Deep Purple made in Japan and Santana and all of that, and there's no looking back. Like, you know, it's been my life from then to this without question. I've never questioned. Oh, I wonder if I should, or I wonder if it. No. Okay.
Is there somebody that you'd particularly identify with in terms of influence in you growing up when you started doing drums?
Yeah, well, when I was a boy, it was all the. It started off with the Beatles, so it was my sort of favourite thing, Ringo. But then, very, very quickly, through Saturday night entertainment, they used to have those sort of the variety shows.
Yeah.
And when I was about 13 years old, I saw the Buddy Rich Big Band.
Oh, yeah.
And within a couple of weeks, I saw the Kinks on Top of the Pops, and it was just. So my taste is very eclectic. Possibly my two favourite drummers in the world are probably Tony Williams and Elvin Jones.
Okay.
And not that it's knocking any but all the great blues drummers were very jazz influenced. John Bonham, probably regarded as the greatest sort of rock drummer of that era, very influenced by jazz music. And when you go back to those players like that, they were so creative, and we all took. I don't care what genre. We all took from those guys.
How did you meet Rory, and what's your greatest memory of him?
I actually met Rory yet again in Belfast when he was living there. When he came up the Taste. There was a music store in Belfast called Crimble's, where I bought my first bass guitar. And Saturday mornings, all us budding musicians would sort of head down to Crimble's and maybe pick up a guitar if you were allowed to, and so on. And I went in one Saturday morning, and Rory was sitting playing an acoustic guitar, and I was a fan at this stage, so I sort of plucked up the courage and went over and said hello to him. I was like 16,
Okay.
And he was great, and I just said, I'm trying to get into a band, and I'm trying to a couple of guys in school, and it's just he said, just practice as much as you can, and listen to as much as you can, and that's the first time I met him.
I was still am a big fan, but as a teenager I was a massive fan. There was no kind of show, there was no frills and fancies or anything like that. It was just about the music and the energy, really, and the passion for it.
Is there such a thing as Irish blues music, or does Mississippi Delta, there's a lot of blues festivals here? I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on it.
Well, yeah, when I hear people like Dead Dannon or the Buffy Band, all those greats, bands that came out of the 70s and 80s, go back to the Chieftains or whatever, I know all that. You can hear some of the sadness in that. For me, you hear a set of Yale and pipes playing somewhere, and it just makes you want to weep. Those notes are generations and centuries in the making. Somebody just didn't come out of a computer. Let's put it that way.
Well, I mean, I was kind of listening to 70s rock, and you would sort of hear like an acknowledgement of the blues. Hendrix would do a slow blues, or Robin Trower would do a slow blues. And I used to hear like Hendrix and people like that. They all said the same names in the interviews: B.B. King, Peter Green, Freddie King, Albert King, Buddy Guy. And so I sourced these players out. I went and found them, and I found that there was like a. I thought, this is where all of the rock and roll guys got the licks from. This is like the source of the real music. But I mean, I listened to all kinds of music, from Chet Atkins to the Beatles to the Carpenters to you name it, Eddie Van Halen. But I think the blues is one of two or three seeds of the whole game. English, Celtic, Scottish, Irish folk music, and it's all part of the root of the tree. I know Van Morrison. I saw Van Morrison in an interview, and he was saying that the basically trace the real roots of this back to the Borders and Celtic. So I mean, I know the Americans swear blind they invented it, but maybe it happened in America. But I think the roots happened here actually.
Rory was steeped in blues music, but you could hear his Irishisms in it. his Irishness was going through all of his guitar playing, but he was a blues guitar player. But he was so unique because of that sort of, you can call it Celtic or Irish influence on it. But everyone has to be able to recognise that, and that's what made him. That's why he was one of the people who carried it on. You know, he just didn't copy B.B. King or Freddie or Albert or any of those guys. He
did it his own way.
And Muddy was massive Muddy fan, as we all know, but in his slide playing you can hear it. But he then developed it on from that. So got to develop it.
Do you think it was like coming from Liverpool in the UK, or do you think it was because like somebody else said about American soldiers being over with World War II? Or
I heard that story because apparently a lot of the black GIs were stationed in Derry and in Belfast. And the story I heard, they brought their blues records, I mean, with them, you know, I mean, and when they ran out of money, whatever, they'd go down and hawk them. And there was a market in Belfast called Smithfield, which is really famous. And you could get some amazing records down there, you know. I mean, that sounds like a great story, maybe too good to be true, but I like to believe that. I think it's a great story anyway.
Okay.
Irish blues. Hey, you know what? Maybe if you wound the clock back 500 years or 1,000 years, maybe. I mean, I wouldn't say yes and I wouldn't say no, but it depends what you call. Do you call B.B. King blues, or do you call, you know, the guy who wrote "She Walks Through the Fair" as blues?
Yeah, it's a good point. It's a good point.
Who influenced you as a musician, or was it somebody like internationally or more closer to home?
No, the Shadows.
Shadows.
That was it. The Shadows. I mean, I saw the Shadows with Cliff Richards and the young ones in the cinema in the summer holiday, and I saw them on TV, and Sunday night at the London played them, and I wanted to be a Shadow.
Okay.
No, it's just the way they looked, the way they played, you know, like, and then everybody sort of took the Shadows, you know, as a pinch of salt. But it's in later years you realise how good those guys were.
Yeah.
You know, and that was my first influence. Jed Harris, who was the bass player. I was a big fan of Jed Harris. First of all, he was a bass player, and I was learning how to play guitar. But not so much as musicianship; it's just the way he looked. It was a friend of mine, a school friend of mine, and we were sort of into music. And he managed to buy the John Bell Blues Breakers album with Eric Clapton, the famous Beano one, you know. Yeah. And started listening to it, and then realising who was writing the songs, and then we delved back and we found Muddy Waters and Otis Rush and all, you know, Willie Dixon and all these guys. So that was the crossover for me. That's how I discovered the blues, through that album. Funny enough, through the British blues boom, for want of a better word. There was a very healthy blues scene, especially in Belfast. Yeah. In the 60s and early 60s. I mean, Van Morrison would have been part of, you know, bringing it to fruition. Yeah. So, I mean, a very, very healthy rhythm and blues scene. I mean, hence, that's one of the reasons why Rory came up with Taste Mark 1, because of that healthy blues scene in Belfast. And he came up and lived just outside Belfast for quite a while.
How did you gravitate to the bass then?
The first band we were in, the band was called Pride. The 4-piece band, and our bass player Don, well, his nickname was Don, his name was Robert Donaghy. He was a trainee butcher, so we would rehearse. I mean, you know, either after school or a couple of guys were already working. As I say, Don was a trainee butcher, so we turned up for rehearsals, and in about 10 minutes the bass guitar would be covered in blood, because obviously a trainee butcher and he's cutting himself all over the place. So he couldn't go on. Okay. So our so-called leader, Mr. Jim Ferguson, said, "Right, McAvoy, you're taking over the bass," and that was it. Well, the reason was because I was taking music lessons from a great teacher in Belfast called Jack Lowry. And so I knew the rudiments of, I could read a bit of music and I knew the chords. And so I was teaching Don how to play bass, through my, little understanding of the guitar, So that was it. There was no way around it. So I had to take over the bass.
And then you went from there to Deep Joy, was it, from Pride?
That's right. Well, Pride sort of morphed into Deep Joy. Brendan left, and then Wilco Campbell actually joined Deep Joy, and another guitar player from Belfast called Jimmy Carlisle. So we were sort of progressing musically by that stage. And then, Fergie had enough, and he wanted to continue with whatever he was doing, So we ended up getting a keyboard player, a guy called Dave Harper, and then he left. And we got another guy called Chris Morrison, who was a pretty eccentric guy, but great musician. And we took that band to London eventually.
I presume you saw Taste as a fan, or
I did. Yeah. And when they first came up from Cork to live, and they actually lived outside Belfast, a place called Ballyholme. And I was a fan. I mean, I used to go to the Club Rado, the Maritime, which became Club Rado, the jazz club, to see Taste, And in fact, the first time I came up, the first show they did was actually in Club Rado, and they were doing the break for quite a well-known blues band called The Few in Belfast.
Okay.
And so Rory and the two guys come on stage for 20 minutes using all the Few's equipment, which was all pretty good because the Few were all sort of rich guys, and they could afford good equipment. And by the end of it, the equipment wasn't in too good nick after Rory and the guys got stuck into it. But they were fantastic. It was a breath of fresh air. Okay. Seeing those three guys, Rory, Norman, and bass player Eric.
Your book, you mentioned going on tour for the first time with him.
Well, Deep Joy's broke up the same a little bit after Taste. I think Taste broke up around October or something at the Queen's University thing, and my band Deep Joy broke up on New Year's Eve, 1970 into 71. And I got a call about the third week of January. And I thought it was Wilger, because Wilger had stayed behind in London because he had a family, his wife and kids. But it was Rory. And I said, Gerry, how you doing? I mean, I'd been acquainted with Rory because with Deep Joy, we supported him a lot, in Europe and in England and in Belfast as well. And he says, how you doing? So and so. I said, I said, you playing? He said, well, I'm trying to get something together. But it was all a bit, I didn't know whether I wanted to, keep on playing music. I mean, after, because it was a fairly rough year in London, leading up to that. And Rory said, well, do you fancy coming over to London and having a jam with myself? And Wilger's here, I've got Wilger's number. So I said, yeah. So that was it. So I flew over to London and we met up in a little studio in Fulham Palace Road, I think it was, in West London.
Yeah.
And we just jammed for about 4 hours, just playing, old standards and none of his own songs at that stage. It's just old standards, And that was it. And it was Donald, Rory's brother, brought me back up to the airport. And that was it. Didn't hear anything for about 3 weeks. So I thought, there you go, that's it. Yeah. Then I got another call from Rory saying, do you fancy coming over and making a record? Oh my God, do I? So that was it. So I went over and we made we rehearsed for about 3 or 4 days in the same little studio in Fulham Palace Road. And then we went into Advision Studios. Now, I'd been in this studio in Belfast before with Deep Joy. We made some recordings, but very, very feeble. And when you walk into Advision Studios, you go, oh my God, this is the real thing. I mean, Eddie Offord on engineer and the bands, and Yes, it recorded there, and all these different bands have recorded there. I'm like, oh wow, this is it. ELP, and it was great.
Did you agree with the music choices when you're coming up with songs, or do you go, here's an influence I have, here's an influence he has?
So with Rory? No, Rory called the shots.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Rory wrote the music. But we were influenced by the same sort of music, which helps, Yeah. But no, Rory called the shots.
Could you tell me about your experience with Rory Gallagher? Like, how did you find playing with him, for example?
Exhilarating, exciting, hard work, pressure. But it was all part of what made Rory.
set list?
There was a roadmap of sorts that you would probably, depending on how length of time the tour was, there would be a part of it where it started with the first 2-3 tunes maybe.
Okay.
But then after that it was like, where's the road going to take us, you know? And then he would call a blues somewhere, maybe third tune, sometimes maybe not the fifth tune, and he had such a ranging repertoire of songs. It changed.
In terms of, I've interviewed like so many fans from all walks of life, all over the island, and you ask them, you know, what about Rory Gallagher? And you go, I saw him in 1982, and you know, wherever it was.
Yeah.
It just means so much to so many people. Why do you think that's so?
The dedication he had to the show, and the emotion that was, the excitement, all of those, the audience felt all those things as well. You know, it was one big unit. Once it happened, it was like it was a thread joined everybody up, and he dragged everybody along with that thread, I think.
I filmed you guys in Ballyshannon doing A Million Miles Away.
Right.
And it just seemed like your drum solo encapsulated every drummer who played with Rory.
What Rory, the legacy that Rory's left behind, you know, and people who love that music, people who love Rory, come here. You know, it's a bit of a pilgrimage, for want of a better word, you know. Yeah. And it's grown over the years, you know. Rory's brothers had a lot to do with putting this whole thing together in the first place, Donald, you know. And it's just a fantastic atmosphere here. I mean, we just drove through the main street there, like, and people out, you know, it's fantastic. And plus the weather. Yeah. And when the weather's like this, it makes a big difference here in Ballyshannon. Really, these fans love Rory. You know, maybe some of the younger fans never saw Rory, you know, but they've been brought up with this music through the parents or the grandparents, maybe, whatever. You know.
You were awarded a Fender 62 ratio Strat. Could you tell me what happened there?
Right. Well, there was an advert in the newspaper said Fender sponsored guitar competition, winner Rory Gallagher style Strat and a Vox AC30 in a competition judged by Rory Gallagher. My mate read it out, it was down the phone, and I thought, I'm going to have a go at that.
Yeah.
So I went, what they were doing was they were taking camcorders around shops, guitar shops, and filming people. So I went down there, I thought Rory was going to be there, you see. So I was all excited, I want to meet Rory Gallagher in the town today. I got there and he wasn't there.
Right.
And although I was disappointed, it was kind of like it took the pressure off the thing.
Yeah.
So I just played.
Yeah.
You know, here we go. You know, I just kind of played, and then a fortnight later they rang us up and says, "You've won the guitar and amp. Rory picked you." And I said to Don, Rory's brother, later on, I said, "So how many people entered?" He goes, "About 1,000." And Rory picked it. What they did was the team wheeled it down to 20.
Yeah.
And then they gave that 20 to Rory, you know, and I tell you, I had a few pints of Guinness that day, I can promise you. I think it was something to do with, he thought I had like a finesse and a flair.
Yeah. That
was me, rather than Stanton playing licks.
How could we keep blues music healthy and going into the future?
Not to restrict young players into thinking that they have to follow all of the rules. They should do what great jazzers do. They should learn it all, listen to all those great players, absorb it, and then take it on themselves.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How did you get involved in Band of Friends?
Well, that's kind of, it's a strange thing. There's two stories run parallel. So there's the guitar competition, and I got quite friendly with Don Gallagher for a few years there, a long time ago. I moved back to Newcastle and things changed because I lived in London for a long time. But I was in touch with Don Gallagher and then Richard Newman was playing drums with us, who played with Rory right at the end.
Okay.
And Rich Newman was playing drums with us, and Rich left the band, and we were playing in this part of Scotland just outside of Glasgow called Coatbridge, which is Ted McKenna's hometown.
Oh yeah.
So completely unconnected to the Rory Gallagher guitar competition. This guy who used to come to the gigs says, Ted McKenna just lives up the street from me. He says, I see him all the time. He says, you're looking for a drummer? I says, yeah. He says, I'll mention it to him. and I said, well, give him a CD, because it was the end of a gig and we knew this drummer was leaving, so it was the end of the gig. I give him a CD. I'd seen him a few times before.
Right.
And, so that's that. And then I'm on the beach walking the dog and the phone rings. I says, hello? He says, is this Ted McKenna? Is that Paul Rose? So then Ted rings us. So now Ted McKenna's playing drums in my band, right? And he was with me off and on for the best part of 12 years.
Wow.
Yeah, we did loads of stuff. Did an album together, recorded in Lisbon up there by Belfast, played all over the place, Germany, all over Orkney Island. And I ended up producing the Band of Friends album, because I do a lot of studio work as well. I ended up producing Too Much Is Not Enough, the CD, and I mixed the live DVD. And so that was like my first contact with Gerry. And when Ted died, God rest his soul, we were all heartbroken. So when Ted died, Gerry reached out to us and said, do you want to come in and have a go, And so that's how it happened, basically.
Okay. Did you meet any blues musician that would stand out for you in your time?
I met Muddy Waters.
Did you?
Yeah.
What was he like?
Oh, he's fantastic. Lovely man. Lovely man. It's when Rory was doing the London sessions, and Rory played with Muddy Waters on that album, and I was lucky enough to meet him. Everybody
that I've interviewed is so proud that you guys toured the North. Every time I interviewed, it's like they were the only ones who come up when nobody else did.
That's right.
Like, what was it like?
Well, the first time was actually 1970, would have been 71, I think, when I just joined Rory, And the word came in, we're going to go and play Belfast. I'm from Belfast, I'm thinking, I don't know if that's such a good idea,
Rory Gallagher commented on the 21st of August 1971. The last time I played there, things were rather grim in the streets, but as soon as the concert started, it was all okay. A rock concert certainly brightens things up, and it wouldn't be a bad idea to have, say, 4 concerts in 4 weeks with acts from England, just to give the kids something to cheer them up. Music can always have a good effect on people, especially the young, and it does clear the air a bit. I know that.
But Rory said, no, we're going to do it, so we went, and it was an amazing night.
And you hear about in America, music healing from all different types and backgrounds. But like here in Ireland, from everybody from all backgrounds are saying, I saw, your band, at Rory Gallagher in the 1970s, and one's from one side of the aisle, another one's from another side of the aisle. You actually have managed genuinely to bring people together. Why do you think that is?
I think it's down to Rory. I think it was down to his working class standard. There was no stardom about Rory. Rory wore a denim jacket, check shirt, and jeans. There was no pizzazz about Rory. And I think people were attracted to that.
There's no dissension. Both sides of the community were there in the Ulster Hall and Belfast. It was fabulous.
The Ulster Hall that night was packed with people from all sides of the community. There was no dissension whatsoever, and it was quite an amazing event. That really was an amazing event. Politics, religion went out the window. Nobody gave a damn.
Can you tell me about your biography, Riding Shotgun, please?
Well, yeah, it was my story.
Okay.
Of growing up in Belfast, and meeting Rory, and a lot of it was about Rory because I was with Rory for 20 years, so a lot of it. It's just something I wanted to put down on paper. I just wanted, for my kids, and so it's there.
Is there a festival or a gig that really stands out for you in terms of all your time playing with Rory?
Well, that particular night in Belfast was one. The one that does stick in my mind, which was a bit of a disaster actually, was we played a festival in America. I think it was Indiana. It's called a Soda Pop Festival.
Okay.
And actually, it was like 350,000 people there.
Okay.
In the burnt. This is well documented. The Soda Pop Festival in Bull Island, Indiana, I think it was.
Okay.
And because the jurisdiction was from two different states, so that they couldn't get police onto it was crazy. I mean, the lineup was amazing. Go on, Rory, so on and so. It was amazing, but half the bands didn't play. Okay. We went over and played. You know, and to look out at 350,000 people, it's quite an amazing sight.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like when you can't see the end of it. It's just like a sea. You know, there's a horizon somewhere, but it was incredible. But we got out of there. We left, and we went there by helicopter, back over onto the mainland by helicopter. Then they burnt the stage down.
Okay.
well, because most of the bands didn't play.
You play a multitude of styles when you're with Rory, like country, blues, folk, everything. You know, is there like a particular type that appeals to you, or blues music? Does that appeal to you more, or does it matter?
I mean, I love blues music. I mean, it's you know, it's one of my great loves. But I mean, at the same time, I grew up with, you know, playing lots of different styles of music. The same as Rory. You know, in the show band, I mean, you know, you had to play your country songs, you know, maybe not so many blues songs in the show band, but a couple of rock and roll songs. Rory would creep in, Chuck Berry songs, and so you grew up listening to that stuff and playing that stuff.
Yeah.
And then to play with Rory, who on the first album was actually doing that, playing a bit of country, playing a bit of blues, playing a bit of folk, you know, even a little bit of pops thrown in there, you know, so that was great.
Remarkably, you told me before in an interview you didn't really play as much with a set list. You might have had the bones of one, but you didn't really.
There was never a set list.
And like sometimes, like he would go into another world in terms of playing. How would you kind of keep the whole thing chugging along, or centered, keep him centered, or what's been difficult?
For the simple reason that what I just said, you grew up playing all styles of music.
Okay.
You know, and listening to all styles of music. I mean, I can remember New York. One night, I can't remember the venue, but it was a great night, and Rory was on top of it, you know, and he just fancied, he started playing Rain by the Beatles. Now, luckily enough, myself and Rod and Lou at that time, drums and piano, we knew the song Rain, so you just join in.
Yeah.
And I think Rory wouldn't have a band with musicians who couldn't do that, you know, and you can't play a certain song when that's the way it was. You know, the first Rory band was obviously with Wilger. You know, had a certain style of playing, you know, which actually suited the songs, you know, at that time, the songs that Rory was writing. And Rory had this amazing way of adopting and writing songs sometimes, not for the musicians, but to accomplish what the musicians could do, you know. So, you know, with Wilger, I mean, there's a lot of sort of jazzy stuff in there, you know, because Wilger was quite a jazzy sort of player. And then I went to Rod Diath and Lou Martin, and yet again, then Rory started writing in a different way because of the piano.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't make them like you anymore, and stuff like that. You know, Cradle Rock really brings in the piano and the keyboard thing. And I mean, and Ted, of course, when Ted joined, I mean, Ted was like a heavy, hard rock drummer. So, I mean, you listen to Photo Finish, which is Ted's first album. I mean, there's a lot of real rock songs on there. So Rory was way ahead of his game. And then later years, I mean, after Ted, I mean, Brendan O'Neill came in.
Yeah.
And then Brendan's like the master of the shuffle.
Yeah.
So Rory was doing a couple of shuffle songs, and you know, it's just, you know, that's the way it was. That's the way he was. But they were all great musicians.
How did you manage to pick up the pieces after his death?
Well, what it was actually, I hadn't heard anything, and as I was in the garden, and my wife called me in. It was our old tour manager, Phil McDonald, on the phone. So I said, "Phil, how are you doing?" And I could hear he was breaking down. He was sobbing. He said he just heard from his brother-in-law in Stuttgart in Germany that they announced on the radio that Rory had passed. I said, "No, it can't be. It's impossible." You know, because I was speaking to Tom Driscoll, Rory's old roadie, the week before, like, and everything was fine. You know, Rory was in hospital, yeah, but everything seemed to be fine. And then eventually, I said, I'll need to check this up. So I rang Donald, and I was ringing all afternoon. And eventually I got through, and it was Donald's wife answered. and she verified it. Yeah, that Rory had passed away. Yeah, it was a hard blow, very hard. I mean, even though I wasn't playing with Rory anymore, I'd left Rory. I mean,
yeah,
4 years previous, but he he was still in my heart.
I mean, I know you're in 9 Below Zero, but then you went to Band of Friends, and again, Brendan O'Neill comes back, and you must have a very interesting friendship that keeps dovetailing in and out all the time.
Well, it's the same with 9 Below Zero. I mean, Brendan and I joined up with 9 Below Zero for quite a few years, and then I decided to leave 9 Below Zero and put Band of Friends together. And luckily enough, with Ted, another cycle.
Yeah.
And I got in touch with Ted, and Ted was lecturing at college in Glasgow and on the music business. And I said, "Do you fancy having a go?" And he said, "Yeah, who's playing guitar?" And I'd find this young guy in Amsterdam and Holland called Marcel Schippendale. So then we put that together. And that went on for quite a few years, and it sort of snowballed. It was really good. And then sadly we lost Ted. Ted died in 2019. So the obvious choice was Brendan.
Yeah. What you do with Band of Friends is, to me, the epitome of blues in a sense. It's survival. It's like, you ask what the blues is about. It's like, you weather the blows of, people dying, and you're still keeping the dream alive for so many. Like, I look at the audience filming you, and I nearly want to film the audience as much as I want to film you, because they're gone.
One more time for Rory. I'm a million miles away. I'm a million miles away. All the way back. Come on, Ballyshannon, come on. I'm a million miles away. I'm a million miles away.
You will the audience to get up off their feet when you are playing. Like, you're demanding nearly that they get up off their feet. What do you hope people experience when they see Band of Friends?
Well, it's obviously we're playing Rory's songs. I mean, you have to have a certain amount of respect. But at the same time, I mean, Rory was the same. I mean, entertainment value was very high on his list. To entertain the people as well. I mean, entertain yourself, of course, but it's a band will play off the audience and vice versa. So if you can get the audience on your side, then you're on a winning game, until the end of the night.
For you, what does blues music mean for you?
What does it mean for me? I love the music. I love the origins of the music and why the music is called blues. And some people say, it's because you're depressed and it's depressing. It's not. It's far from it. It's a genre of music that I love.